The events began on a cold October night when Officer X, a police officer with an impeccable record and 2 decades of service, was called to the scene of a gruesome murder. A family had been brutally slaughtered in their own home. Blood formed grotesque patterns on the walls, patterns that defied any logical or violent explanation. The air was thick with the stench of decay, intermingled with the inexplicable scent of burnt wood. Investigators found no signs of forced entry, no clues pointing to a struggle. But the most peculiar detail was that every clock in the house had stopped at exactly 3:15 a.m. It was Officer X who noticed this eerie connection, documenting it with a detached, almost mechanical precision. No one could have foreseen that this marked the beginning of an unimaginable descent into horror. Over the next few months, more murders followed. The victims seemed to be chosen at random. A young couple in a remote motel, a businessman in his penthouse, a solitary teacher in her modest apartment. The modus operandi remained chillingly consistent. Savage mutilations, stopped clocks, and the omnipresent smell of smoke. Yet there was no discernible connection between the victims. No DNA evidence, no witnesses. Officer X was present at nearly every crime scene. His colleagues admired his composure in the face of such grotesque violence. But something about him began to change. He grew distant, often appearing lost in thought or as if entranced. Some officers overheard him murmuring to himself, and his remarks grew increasingly cryptic. The case took a shocking turn when surveillance footage from one of the crime scenes surfaced. The grainy recording showed a shadowy figure moving through the house with an unnatural, distorted gait. When a forensic analyst enhanced the footage, the revelation stunned everyone. The figure's outline matched Officer X exactly. He was immediately suspended and placed under intense scrutiny. News of the chilling connection leaked to the public, and the media dubbed him the Demon Cop. Investigators searching his home uncovered disturbing artifacts. Charred manuscripts in an indecipherable language, drawings of arcane symbols hinting at occult practices, and an old journal filled with repetitive phrases: "The time has come, I am the servant, the guilty will fall." Then, one night, everything took a darker turn. Officer X, held in solitary confinement, disappeared. Surveillance cameras outside his cell mysteriously failed. When guards entered, they found the walls scrawled with symbols and words carved into what looked like flesh, but they couldn't determine how or why. The only clue was a final, blood-drenched message: "It never ends." After his disappearance, the murders resumed, but with a terrifying twist. Survivors of the attacks claimed to see a shadow resembling a police officer. Some reported hearing a voice, a cacophony of overlapping tones, some eerily resembling the voices of past victims. The killings followed the same grim pattern: mutilations, stopped clocks, and that ever-present smell of smoke. Authorities officially closed the case, declaring Officer X dead and attributing the new murders to a copycat. Yet in the towns where the crimes occurred, fear persisted. Whispers of a curse or a dark force unleashed by Officer X linger to this day. Some swear they've heard the faint clicking of his boots on rain-slick streets, or caught the acrid scent of smoke in the night. Rumors of Officer X's transformation grew more elaborate. Some believed he had been possessed by an ancient, malevolent entity, drawn to the crimes as part of some sinister ritual. Others speculated that his descent into darkness began long before the murders, that he had secretly dabbled in the occult, unknowingly binding himself to a force beyond human comprehension. Meanwhile, survivors of the attacks reported disturbing dreams and waking visions. Some described seeing the silhouette of a police officer standing at the foot of their beds, his outline flickering like a dying flame. Others claimed to hear whispers in the dark, a guttural voice repeating the words, "The time is near." Local law enforcement struggled to maintain order. Officers who had worked alongside Officer X reported unsettling encounters, finding inexplicable symbols drawn on their desks, feeling watched during late-night shifts, or seeing fleeting shadows out of the corner of their eyes. Many transferred or left the force entirely, unable to shake the creeping paranoia that their former colleague had left behind. In one chilling incident, a detective who had worked closely on the case awoke to find his bedroom filled with smoke. The fire department found no source, yet the acrid smell lingered for days. The detective later claimed to have seen Officer X's reflection in his bathroom mirror, staring back with hollow eyes and a crooked smile. As time passed, the murders began to spread geographically. Towns miles apart reported identical crimes, always accompanied by the same unnerving details. The notion of a copycat became less plausible. Those who survived began to believe that Officer X's essence had transcended the physical world, that he had become something neither human nor entirely of this realm. One investigator, obsessed with uncovering the truth, delved into the manuscripts found in Officer X's home. They appeared to be written in a language that defied translation, yet certain symbols bore a resemblance to ancient texts, detailing summoning rituals and pacts with entities described only as shadowborn. The investigators' findings hinted at a ritual that bound time, blood, and servitude, a ritual eerily aligned with the circumstances of the murders. In an attempt to understand the pattern of these events, researchers mapped the locations of the murders and discovered a chilling revelation. They formed a series of intersecting lines that converged on a single point: a long-abandoned church notorious for its ties to occult activity in the 19th century. The church had been sealed off after a fire consumed it, leaving nothing but charred ruins and whispers of demonic rites. Investigators who ventured there described an oppressive atmosphere, and equipment often failed without explanation. They found no evidence tying the site directly to Officer X, but the connection could not be ignored. At the center of this convergence, within the ruins of the church, lay an unmarked grave. Excavation efforts uncovered a small blackened relic, a clock, its hands frozen at 3:15. Experts could not determine its origin, but those who handled it reported vivid nightmares and an overwhelming sense of dread. The clock was taken into evidence, but soon vanished under mysterious circumstances, sparking rumors of a cover-up. The murders have continued sporadically, each crime bearing the signature traits linked to Officer X. Some believe his spirit is bound to the relic, while others argue he has become a vessel for a greater, malevolent force. The surviving townspeople live in a constant state of vigilance, haunted by the possibility that the nightmare is far from over. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the story of Officer X will never be confined to a case file. It stands as a chilling reminder of the limits of human understanding and the question of what happens when one stares into the abyss, and the abyss stares back. Even now, residents in the affected towns live in fear, dreading the faint scent of smoke or the sound of footsteps echoing in the dark, wondering if the shadow of Officer X will ever truly fade.